All right. We're live. So we just finished watching the premiere of my latest video. Hopefully you all are joining us. Those of you who were just watching that should be popping in here. So we'll give you all a second to get in. But I hope everyone enjoyed it. That was the longest video I have ever done. That was not a live stream. It came in at about 28 minutes. And it was a long time editing. So, all right. So I am joined by Troy and Kyler. Troy, how are you, good sir?
I'm good. It's first week off of Thanksgiving, kind of getting back to reality. But fortunately, I was there on Sunday and watched the terrible loss in person. But it was actually a fun game to be at. It was a good time, and surprisingly, a lot of people were there. So I was a little shocked by that. But yeah, good to be back.
Nice. Kyler, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. It feels like it's been forever. But, glad to be back. Sad it's in a season-ending loss that we're going to talk a little bit about and sort of, the demise of the 2022 Cardinals. But in the new pad, brand new house, going to get this little library set up soon. So we'll get some nice backgrounds for you guys coming up soon.
Nice. Well, it's good to have you guys. I appreciate you hanging out with me. We got some folks in the chat. We got Silver Wolf AZ. Bidwell should sponsor a fantasy football league, and whoever wins is the new GM. Nice. Mark Jackson, great video. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Thanks for being here. We've got Benjamin Bigford. Hi, thanks for being here. So we're gonna kind of jump off of what the video that I just premiered talks about of how are we going to fix this team? So we'll talk a little bit about your guys' opinion, because I haven't really talked about it yet. What you thought of some of the decisions I made in terms of how I would approach it, and then we're going to talk about what you all would do, with some of these different decisions, and we'll get the folks in the chat in. So the whole topic for this is kind of jumping off of that. How are we going to fix this team that right now feels utterly broken in a lot of ways, right? So I'll I know this feels very kind of self-important, but like, hey, what do y'all think of my video? Troy, what were your thoughts of some of the different kind of moves I propose in that video?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of your moves and stuff in keeping with the theme of discussions I know we've had in weeks past and what we feel is lacking. Unfortunately, it's like the interior O-line is just a very persistent theme, and it's so frustrating because 2 years ago that was a major need, and here we are, we're still wanting the same thing. Cornerback number one was a need 2 years ago. Here we are again, still needing a good lockdown corner. So it's just frustrating that I feel like we still need the same things that we've needed for over 2 years now. But your video is great. It's really comprehensive. I really liked how you pretty much covered in all aspects, from free agency to the draft to who you'd keep, who's like the new core of the team going forward, and realistically, and who needs to be moved on from. So I thought it was great. It's a good primer, I guess, for this discussion, this round table, as it were.
Right. Kyler, any thoughts or impressions in terms of or any of the specific moves, or any thoughts on what we just watched? You're muted again.
Keep doing that.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I like the video a lot. I think pretty much everything is spot on to what the team needs. It's very tempting after being hurt so bad on Sunday to want to just nuke the place and not bring anyone back, everyone in a new uniform next year. But I appreciate that you bring it back. The team, there is a kernel there. It needs to be retooled more than rebuilt. And I think you said that exact phrase in your video. And I think that sums up my feelings on the team completely. There are ways to retool, and I do think it starts at the top, and we'll talk about that, and get a team that has talent to win football games again. And we saw it last year, and I really don't want to think that 7-0 was a fluke. But I don't know what's happened since then to really explain what's going on. But a retool, not a rebuild, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. Let me say hey to some of the folks that have dropped in here. We've got KR Gordon. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Sup, Joe. Sup, KR Gordon. Thank you for being here. We have Lord Dane. Tyree Wilson was mocked to us by PFF. Also, great video. Thank you. Appreciate that. H47. What's up, guys? Appreciate you being here. We've got Mikey Cardinal. What's up, bros? Appreciate you hanging out with us. Let's see. And then we've got I think okay, everyone else we've got has already been mentioned once, but yeah, the O-line must be a priority, right? Yeah. So let's get into it. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about so let's start with the kind of the front office side of things. I gave my opinion of what I would do in terms of the GM and the head coach. What would each of you do? Let's have Troy go and get us started. What would you do in terms of the GM and coach with this team?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a little rough, and obviously, realistically, who knows if Bidwell will actually pull the trigger on it. But I mean, I think Keim is well past his due. I mean, this has been a common theme for the past, I feel like, 2 seasons that he needs to go, especially. I think with the Isaiah Simmons draft pick at 8 was just kind of like my last straw with like, all right, like this dude is clearly not like in the contemporary realm of NFL drafting. Like there's so much data out there to suggest why pick a luxury player than offensive tackle who went to Super Bowl with the Buccaneers right afterwards. Huh, well, that'd been nice. So yeah, Keim definitely needs to go. And Cliff, I was a Cliff defender first year, second year, and then, or I guess year 4, I'm now kind of over it all. There's just been too many dumb, stupid decisions. I mean, we've been beat over the head for anyone that like pays attention to like the fantasy, or not fantasy, but like football nerds, the statisticians. They all hate Cliff's offense. They all say it sucks. It's too basic. DeAndre Hopkins lined up on the left way too much, and yada yada. It's all. And now we're getting back to the point where it's 3rd and 1 and no design James Conner runs when he's been eating the entire game. So it's like, I'm officially over it. I can't take it anymore. And the final straw was that stupid lion portrait he has that I saw in Hard Knocks. I was like, I'm done with this guy. He's a 4-year-old man having like a frat poster in his room. I'm over this.
That's maybe the best indictment of Cliff I have ever heard.
That was like the final straw for me. I saw that and I was just like, oh man, come on. Which I feel bad saying this because like when now you hear him in interviews, like you see like the soul has left his body. He seems like a very broken man, and I feel bad for him. So I think both of them got to go. And in terms of head coach, the Sean Payton stuff's obviously been around. I'm a fan. I think obviously he has a history with the Cardinals, and I mean it's not a coincidence whenever he's on when there's a microphone placed in front of him, he's mentioning the Cardinals. He's mentioning Kyler Murray. Again, everyone's pulling up old clips of how he was obsessed with Kyler in the draft. He has a history of elevating shorter quarterbacks. It seems good. Again, we have to give up some draft capital, and what would it be is up for debate. Who knows? I want to get away from the head coach, play caller, offensive coordinator system we have now. It's too much responsibility for one person to handle. I don't think there's any NFL team right now that operates that way. Sure, Kyle Shanahan and those guys kind of are that, but they still have offensive coordinators on the roster and stuff. No one does all 3 by themselves. So I think we need to get away from that. And in terms of GM, that's always so hard to predict. You can't really it could be Adrian Wilson could be good, or it could be some pencil pusher in the back of the office has a good idea, or is really smart. I don't know. I know. Whoever is going to work with the head coach and share a similar vision for this team, that's the key. And even boil it down more, someone who has a vision for this team going forward and who understands, like we'll go into it later, the kernel and the core of this team, what they can do well, and then pursue with that. I think one thing is a lot of NFL people say Cardinals historically have been really bad at evaluating they over-evaluate their talent. They think they're better than they are in terms of their like roster and such. So I think we need to get away from that and just kind of clear out house and start anew, which is always easier said than done, obviously. But yeah.
Yeah, like thinking about who would be a good GM is tough because, like, you can see who the good offensive and defensive coordinators are, right? You watch and you see who's got an offense or defense is playing really well. And with GMs, it's tricky because you've got the GM making the decision, and you might have someone who's on a staff somewhere who's going to be a rock star of a GM, but they're behind someone who's making bad moves for that team, that organization. So you don't see, what they have to offer. So when it comes to GM, like, I'm like, okay, Adrian Wilson, I think's earned a shot. I like Adrian Wilson. He seems like a guy who, he's been with the team for a while. I think he seems like a no nonsense kind of guy, a humble kind of a guy. Sure, that's tougher than a coach, right? To kind of figure out, right? Kyler, what are you doing about the coach and GM?
Excuse me. I've come to the same conclusions that both at this point have to go. The Keim thing, all Cardinals fans have had a complicated relationship with him for years now. But Cliff, I mean, I defended the dude until maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. Still coming to his defense, and I just can't do it anymore when it's week after week a blatant disregard for what works in the NFL. Like, there's a reason that you have statisticians and analysts on the team to help you know what works in the NFL, and he seems to just disregard that information completely. A go route on 4th and 1. Why? You have James Conner on your team. 3rd and 1, James Conner is on your team. And I know you're not going to use your quarterback as a quarterback sneak. That's never going to happen. But you have talent on offense. I know we've had injuries. I know D-Hop got suspended and all that. But all the preseason talk was that the Arizona Cardinals offense was incredibly talented. Had a 5-deep running back room. Even with Hop out, you had a 4 or 5 deep wide receiver room. You had great tight ends. And I know we got decimated with injuries on the offensive line and Zach Ertz and Hollywood Brown. And you can't fault the coach for that, but you also can fault the coach for not adapting to that. Injuries at the end of the day in the business of the NFL are not an excuse. And I don't think Michael Bidwell should be able to use injuries as the excuse to give both of these people further opportunities. Keim is complicated because by the numbers, some of the Cardinals' most successful stretches have been with Steve Keim at the helm. So, yes, we've had the tiny brief moments of success, but if you can't sustain it, then you don't deserve to be a general manager in the NFL. And he's completely incapable of sustaining it and building good rosters year after year. How much of that success was just Bruce Arians being a great coach? You can debate that as well. He has the same mindset as Cliff Kingsbury. He does not take a look at what historically works in the NFL and just do that. Steve Keim seems to consistently need to be the smartest guy in the room, draft the small school guy who's going to show everyone in the league how smart he was, and take the luxury linebackers instead of the offensive linemen and the cornerbacks that your team actually needs. And his complete inactivity this offseason should be the final nail in the coffin. He did not take advantage of some of the last remaining low cap years of Kyler Murray when you should do an LA Rams and go all in. And he did not do that. Kyle Odegaard has had plenty of articles about how this season failed in the offseason when Keim refused to make practically any moves to help the team. So the main thing that helps the team at this point is less about the players and getting competent coaching and the front office behind that. And I think A-Dub deserves the chance. He's stuck around. He's obviously a Cardinal through and through. But like you guys said, GM is a totally unpredictable position. I have never seen a pattern in how you can look at a guy and just know he's going to be a great GM. It's the same in every major sports league, like the Suns, James Jones. I never would have thought he would turn that team around, and he did, and he turned them into a powerhouse, and they're competing for a title every single year for the last 3 years. So A-Dub might be it, he might not be, but coaching, Sean Payton. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure, but that's not going to happen. I mean, just realistically, it's not going to happen.
Maybe.
It would take a lot.
Yeah. I want to say hey to some of the folks that have come in here. We got Mono 187. If we keep listening to GM, I think the majority of the scouting department stays right. I think the scouting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. When you have a change of GM, I don't think you fire the whole scouting department. Like, teams usually have their scouts that they've had for a while, and they may hire or fire some of them, but that's independent. Maybe the GM, when they come in, has someone but it's not like a coaching situation where you fire the whole coaching staff, right?
So
I think regardless of who the GM is, the scouting department, at least the default position is they're going to stay, and then the new GM might choose to make some moves, but it's not a house cleaning typically. At least that's my understanding. We got Dakota Bedard. Thanks for being here. I don't want former Cardinals player for GM. I want a veteran GM. It's hard to say. I think, to be honest, that's just one of those things where that's where the interview process, to be honest, you figure out who the guy is through interviews, and sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. We have Payo time. Hey, everyone, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, Payo. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for dropping by. We got Ian Keller. Thanks for hanging out with us. Andrew saying those 5 running backs, half of them are gone. Yeah, I mean, they're gone or banged up, and boy, that's a mess. I mean, for different reasons, right? Injuries for a couple of them, and then everything but that also shows how replaceable running backs are. We've talked about this before, right? Yeah. Payo's got a quick question. How concerned are Cardinals fans at Hopkins wanting a trade to go chase a ring if Cliff is fired? I mean, I'll answer this really quick, and you can tell me if you've heard different. I've never heard Cardinals fans worried about that. That's a new one to me. So I don't think that's something they're worried about. Let's see if there's anyone else. I want to make sure I say hey to everyone at least once. We got Cruz. Thank you for being here, channel member. My Retro Bowl team hasn't lost in 40 seasons. I'll be the GM and head coach. There you go. You got my vote, right? Awesome. And Payo's playing Pokemon while he's listening, so appreciate that, right? Okay. So let's talk about the Sean Payton thing, right? I would like Sean Payton as a coach. He's a good coach. He's a guy who, he's one of the coaches that when he was with the Saints, there was always a high floor, right? Even they would start Taysom Hill and he'd find a way to win 8 or 9 games, right? Yeah. He's a good coach. He's coached with a short quarterback before. That's, so there you go. So listen, I don't dislike him as a coach. I know, people hold against him the whole Bounty Gate thing. And listen, that wasn't good. That was more Greg Williams, defensive coordinator, but he was complicit in that. So I don't want to give him a complete pass. But I think he'd be a great coach. My aversion is trading a first-round pick plus. The rumors are that the Saints want multiple first-round picks, but, they're going to try to, set a high bar. They're going to try to negotiate, right? That's their opening position. Is that what it would take? So I want to ask you, you gentlemen, what do you think realistically it would take to get Sean Payton? What kind of trade value? And this is tough because, trading draft picks for draft picks, the trade value, there's charts on that, right? And draft picks for players, it's a little easier because there's more precedent and you can kind of get an idea what's a quarterback going to trade for, and then their contract situation and age, you can still guesstimate. But coaches are traded so infrequently, right? So there's not a lot to work with. Troy, what do you think realistically it would cost the Cardinals to trade for Sean Payton?
Well, I think the only 2 precedents that we kind of have is the Bruce Arians one. I think he was traded for a 6th round for him to go to the Bucks. But again, there was really no leverage, I think, kind of on the Cardinals end for that. So that's a little different. And I believe I heard this on another Cardinals podcast I was listening to today. Where did Raiders coach? Oh gosh, Gruden, he was traded. Wasn't he traded to the
it,
Raiders?
was he maybe did he retire from Tampa Bay or?
I think he was traded.
Okay. Well, okay.
And I think that was a first round, maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay.
He was traded. So if someone looks, but I don't know. I hope it's a third round pick for my own selfish reasons.
Right.
Because I don't want to give up a first round or a second because oh, see, there we go. Belichick, New York Jets. They got traded for a first and a fourth. So first is a little rich for my blood.
Wow, John Gruden was 2 firsts, 2 seconds.
Oh, gross. Definitely not that.
That sets that precedent for the Saints wanting multiple first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, who knows what happens, but I think anything more than a third is a little too rich because, again, there's going to be more options, more coaches out there, and talent on the roster is a higher priority, in my opinion. But I think what's great about Sean Payton is I believe when he went to the Saints, like they weren't a very good organization or team at that point in time, and he built them into the powerhouse they were. So he would have experience at that if he came here. But yeah, again, the bigger roster though, like our bigger coaching staff, because he's just the head coach. I don't believe he's a play caller or a coordinator. Technically, I think he has both those on his staff. So again,
what do you think? And I got a super chat I'll get to you after this question. Thank you, KR Gordon. What do you think, if you had to guess, what do you think it's going to cost for him? If a team goes to the table and says we are going to negotiate for him, and there's all the back and forth, the posturing, and in the end, when the dust settles, what do you think it's going to take to get him?
Probably a first and like a third, maybe, because I think he's only through contract through 2024. So like a theme in soccer, for those that pay attention, like players become a lot cheaper when they're on their last year of their contract. So I think like the Saints' bargaining power is diminished if there's only 1 year left on his contract. So first and third is my guess, and that's just the number off a dartboard essentially.
Yeah. Kyler, what do you think?
I think it'd take at least one first and maybe multiple mid-round picks. They're not going to let him go cheap if they can get something out of him, which they definitely can. Sean Payton is obviously a great coach. Like, he's kind of in the mold of the Mike Tomlins. He's never going to be bad, minus this year. The Steelers are bad. But Mike Tomlin before that was like the most consistent coach in the league. And Sean Payton was up there with him. He just didn't lose you a ton of games. And he didn't always deal with a huge amount of talent. The Drew Brees years were pretty good when Brees was in his prime. But he's a great coach. I don't know who said it. It wasn't me, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But I think one of the differences between Cliff and Sean Payton is that Cliff is a good guy, and I think he is genuinely trying his best, and he's out of his depth, and a bad coach. And Sean Payton might be a bad guy, but he is a fantastic coach, and you got to give him credit for that. So,
yeah.
I just don't think it's going to happen. One, the draft capital that you'd have to give up, and two, part of our problem is that Michael Bidwell is apparently one of the most forgiving men in the NFL, and will keep you on. He has this loyalty thing, and the Cardinals draft team captains, and it's all about ethics and getting the good guys to do it. I'm not sure that Michael Bidwell would spend that much to get a guy with a little bit of a tainted ethical past.
Well, let me use that as a great segue because KR Gordon's comment is about Bidwell. And thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that sincerely. He says, I don't think Bidwell has the balls to admit he messed up giving those idiots extensions and actually fire them to better this team as bad as we want. So I think Michael Bidwell's I don't think he's a bad guy. I think maybe some of his decisions haven't been great. I like him. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I actually think if you look at history, I I respectfully don't agree that I think Bidwell is actually. I think he's a guy who's actually had quite a few mea culpas. Remember, they drafted a quarterback in the top, in the first round, ninth overall or whatever, and then very next year, he had to sign off on drafting Kyler Murray, and he signed off on, yes, you can draft a quarterback number 1 overall, even though we just drafted one. And that's sort of an admission of a mistake. Now, he didn't come to a podium and say, we made a mistake or whatever. But if you're talking about, not having the willingness to admit or acknowledge that or whatever, or accept, eat crow, whatever you want to call it, he did that. And then you had the independent study clause, and he got, he didn't stick with his guns and keep it in there. He's like, okay, well, clearly this didn't go well, and they took it out. So I do think he's absolutely I think the core of this comment is that, really is that he's not, that his ego is going to get in the way. And I just don't think it does. I think he's shown his ego doesn't get in the way. In fact, he someone like Jim Irsay or Jerry Jones would have got up on that podium and defended the independent study clause and told you all in the media why you were wrong to make fun of it. Mm-hmm. Michael Bidwell stepped back, kept quiet, took it out, and let the media pile on. And so I just think, I think he's actually, I've talked about this before, I think he's actually savvy in the PR sense of when fires are burning, don't add fuel. Michael Bidwell makes mistakes, but he doesn't add fuel to fire. So there's a lot of reasons you could criticize what he's done, but I think he will take those mea culpas. The bigger concern is the money, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's moving from Josh Rosen to Kyler Murray wasn't a huge financial decision. Yeah. I mean, Josh Rosen was cheap, so it didn't really matter. And for those that don't remember, Cliff was ended up with this because of us firing Steve Wilkes, and now he's going to pay 2 coaches. So he went for the cheap option, and also the last 2 choices for a head coach were Adam Gase and Cliff Kingsbury. So between those 2, he made the right decision, but it was also the cheap decision. And because no head coach wanted the Arizona job because of our terrible roster, and Bidwell didn't want to, pull out the paycheck for a proven head coach, even if there was one maybe. So it's the money thing for me is what makes me think he's not going to do the Sean Payton thing, because not only is he now paying 2 head coaches again, which is a situation no one wants to be in, he's also giving up draft capital, and Sean Payton's going to be that's a yearly salary right there.
He's going to be one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL wherever he lands. Top 3, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it when we were going over the Kyler contract stuff in the summer, that having a really, really rich owner pays off, and the Rams kind of prove that. Stan Kroenke has all the money in the world to do whatever he wants with any of his teams. And although it's crazy because, he's still a billionaire, Michael Bidwell is one of the poorest owners in the NFL. And having that cash on hand type of just money to burn makes a difference. When you're a Jerry Jones, you can literally do whatever you want. But when you're a Michael Bidwell with slightly more limited resources, you can't. And paying 3 coaches for the foreseeable future, isn't probably something financially that he can afford to do.
Now, I will say, and this is a little, I was reading up on this, and it's a little complicated, but there are some things that offset that. Some, if a coach gets hired by another team, you're not on the hook for that full salary, and there is sort of this legal proceeding, and coaches are expected to make a good faith effort to try to get a job. So it's not as simple as, and again, it's complicated. I don't even understand exactly how all the math works, but it's not as simple as you're going to be on the hook for all those contracts simultaneously. But you are on the hook for something, and that still matters in this. So it's not a non-factor, right?
Didn't Nebraska take over quite a big chunk of what the Panthers still owed Matt Rule when they hired him this last week? I think I read that.
Maybe that might have been part of a negotiation. I like my understanding of it isn't that the new employer has to take on the contract, but rather that it's rather that something the previous employer is no longer on the hook for a certain amount based on associated with that.
Well, I believe if the NFL, if they get another job within the NFL, then it's like
Okay.
the new team inherits that contract because the owners are like, we're not going to have guys bouncing around collecting all of our paycheck,
Right.
So the NFL, the college, I don't know, that again might be a Nebraska wanting that role, and because I bet, I don't know, it gets a little hazy for me.
Above my pay grade, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So let me get a couple comments. I know that this is more said in joking, but Blazing Monolith trade Kyler for Sean Payton. So I mentioned this in the video, but I kind of breezed over it a little bit. I want to touch on this though. Just there's a lot of folks who want to move on from Kyler, and I know there's a lot of different opinions. I'm a believer in Kyler. I don't want to get into all that stuff, but there's a bottom line to this. That there's a salary cap implication that's utterly prohibitive. You cannot move on from Kyler for a couple years. Realistic, like this is the dead cap and the quote unquote cap savings. If you get rid of Kyler in this next year, anytime after between now and next season, okay. There's always a different like pre and post June 1st. If you make a move after June 1st, you can spread the cap hit out over the 2 years. So if you want to release Kyler Murray between, after the season ends, there will be a dead cap hit of $97 million, and we will have a cap savings of -80. It will add $81 million to our cap. All right. If you trade him, you're only adding $43 million to our cap and only $59 million of dead cap. But if you go ahead and wait for that post June 1st, right? If you release him, then it's a cap savings of -$35 million. So you add $35 million to our cap, our salaries, right? Against the cap, and $46 million in dead cap, or $51 million dead cap this year, 46 next year. But if you trade him post June 1, we save $3 million. With a dead cap of 13 million and 46 million. Like, that's just, I mean, listen, I know people have different opinions about Kyler Murray. I think you build around him. I know people don't like his attitude, but there's other quarterbacks with attitudes. He's not it's whatever. But practically, you can't move on from him yet. You just can't. So let me hit on a couple super chats. We got Jason Kroll. Thank you for being here. What's up, Joe? Hire Payton, just getting in here. Appreciate you being in here. And let me use this as a jumping off point. Because you both talked about what you thought. You think it'll cost a first round pick and multiple, mid-round picks. If you are in charge, what is the most you're willing to give up? Like, what's the line in the sand for you where this is the most I'm willing to trade for Sean Payton if I'm the Cardinals? Anything more than this, and I'm walking away from the table. Troy, what's your line?
Oh, again, third round's kind of where I'm staying pat. So maybe like a third, fourth, fifth. I don't know. Probably third, fourth, fifth. Maybe it's probably the highest I'd go. I think talent at the end of the day is the most important part. Good coaches. There's a new crop of them every season, whether it's Sean Payton or there's other options, there's other fish in the sea, as it were. So I would just be trying to get this roster straight, again, trying to build this vision of a team and then go from there.
Yeah, and Blazing saying here, to just want to give him a chance to clarify. Let me be clear, I still like Kyle and those numbers. Yeah, and I totally got that with the little smiley thing you did on there that it was a joke. So, but I want to give you that chance to clarify. So yes, Kyler, what for you is that?
I think I agree with Mark Jackson, second and a fifth. If you can do that, it's a little steep, but for the right coach, I do think that is worth it. I can't get to a first round pick for a coach. I just can't. And why would a coach want to come into a situation where he doesn't get a first round pick to build his new team? Like, I don't get that part of it either. But a second and a fifth for a coach of his caliber, who's just a proven winner all the way around, I would do that. I would do that.
Yeah, I think where I'm pushing, like my initial thought is to be where Troy's at, like a third round pick, and maybe throw in a day 3 pick on top of that, another fifth or sixth maybe. But if I'm like in the heat of negotiations and I'm invested and I'm like, all right, I really like, how it is when they get you, you're buying a car and they get you behind the wheel and, you're willing to, they get that emotional thing going. If I'm that invested in the negotiation, I might be able to be talked into a second round pick and a day 3 pick. But not a first round pick for me. So yeah. And there was a comment here. I want to kind of dovetail to this because I think it's a fair question that was raised by, to Slim Shady. How is a draft pick going to turn our team around more than a proven head coach, especially the way Keim drafts? Now, starters, Keim's probably gone in this scenario, most likely. If you're clean, if Bidwell pulls the trigger on finding the coach, I don't know. He and Keim do have that history, but I think he's gone. But this is the counterpoint, right? Like, well, is that first round pick gonna gonna fix this team more than a new coach? And that's a fair question. What's your thoughts on that, Troy?
I saw that earlier and I was thinking, and because here's the flip side though, like what if Sean Payton, like what if he's been out of the game and he is like, what Sean Payton can't turn around, and then we also don't have a first round pick? It's just like, well, what are we doing here? And I'd have more confident in Keim on this first round because, as we've kind of said, we kind of only really have one option in the first round, and we seem to be in a good enough place where there's going to be a couple. Like we need a cornerback, so he can't really screw it up that bad. But how can it's, again, the draft is it is a hit or miss, but like we also seen the upsides of that. Like look at Sauce Gardner, he's completely revolutionized that Jets defense. Look at Patrick Surtain. All it takes is one kind of key cog to really have a lasting effect. And again, what if Sean Payton, what if it doesn't work out? What if he hates Kyler and it all blows up and now we're really in a really bad situation? So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is all kind of pick your poison in a certain kind of way, right? I mean, we don't know. It's the future.
Yeah. What do you think, Kyler?
I mean, it's a good point in a way, but to your point, Keim's not the one making that pick in this hypothetical. Not that that's guaranteed to be any better because this is all hypothetical, but I think a first round draft pick can turn a team around. All the examples that Troy gave, and it's an increasing pattern, especially in the wide receiver realm. I don't want a wide receiver in the first round.
But Jamar Chase, though,
But some of these first round guys are starting to come into teams so much better prepared in college than maybe in the past few decades. They're just playing at a completely different level. Yeah, a 22-year-old first round pick can change your team for sure. So everything is a risk. But I would rather have a good coach and a first round pick too, if I can. So I don't know if I need to choose one or the other.
And I think that's kind of where I come to with this. It's like, it's not that you're choosing a first round pick or a good coach, that those are, a good coach and a first round pick are not mutually exclusive. You can get both. What you might not be able to get is Sean Payton and a first round pick. But I think, like I said, I mean, I think the two coaches that I identified, I'll tell you, I just think this team has enough talent. If you fix the offensive line and get a legitimate NFL head coach and a legitimate NFL system offensive coordinator who runs a West Coast or a zone run or something that is an NFL offense that's not a college coach, I think you're going to have a winning team. I mean, I just feel like if you can get either of those two coaches I identified, and there's probably a few others, you can keep your first round pick and win, right? So yeah,
I will say the Eagles offensive coordinator, I would be really nervous about that guy because I feel like the Eagles offense is like collegiate based pretty much.
Okay.
The reason it's just successful because their roster is so stacked, like it doesn't matter. They're just better than everyone. So it works really well. That's the only thing, and I don't really know. That's kind of what I've heard, but he would make me nervous. But I get it though. I get it. I mean, in terms of building an offense around what your quarterback is good at. I mean, that Eagles offense is a well-oiled machine, man. It's pretty terrifying.
And Sam, thank you for the super chat. So this is relevant to the conversation. You guys want draft picks or great coach? Yes. Right?
To both.
Yeah.
Yes, I want both. And I think, see, this is the thing. Like, I don't like, yes, you can't have draft picks and Sean Payton, but it's a great coach. I think there are other great coaches. So it's not mutually exclusive. I think what this is setting up is a false kind of duality or there's a word I'm looking for. Anyway, dichotomy. It's just that, yes, I know everyone wants Sean Payton, and I get why. I think there are other guys that are going to be really good. So, but thank you for the super chat. I definitely appreciate that. Let me get to Mark Jackson's super chat. Thank you again for all of your generosity, everyone. Bidwell could keep Cliff for next year and then hire Sean Payton. Still firing Keim this offseason. Okay, what do you think of that scenario? What you do, because Sean Payton's no longer that whole trade thing ends next year, right? So if you keep Cliff for a year, fire Keim, and then hire Sean Payton the next year, Troy, what do you think of that scenario?
That just depends if Sean Payton wants to stick around for another year, maybe unemployed. I mean, the whole thing was he has his eyes on the Cardinals/Chargers job, according to that one report. Who knows? There's a good chance that neither of those teams fires their head coach. I mean, if Chargers make the playoffs, which they could, I mean, they're in the running for sure, and Justin Herbert is incredible. They're not going to fire Brandon Staley, no matter how many terrible fourth downs he tries to go for. So it just depends if Sean Payton wants to, if there's not a job that's appealing to him and a deal that can't be struck, if he wants to sit and hang around another year. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I would love that's if we're going to get Sean Payton, that's the most realistic scenario, is just waiting till we're not to give up draft capital and Cliff spends another year spinning his wheels, and if I don't know, and who knows what shape Kyler Murray's in next year,
right.
like it's. But yeah.
Yep. What do you think, Kyler?
I could. It's obviously possible. It just depends how much Sean Payton wants to coach next year. He doesn't have to. I'm sure he's fine without it. But if he's really wanting to get back into coaching, then there is going to be a team in the offseason that needs a coach and is going to go try to get the best option on the market, which I think this offseason cycle is going to be just like far above and beyond Sean Payton, above everyone else if he wants to come back. So someone will get him. I mean, that's all there is to it, I think. There will be enough teams searching for new coaches next year, just like every offseason, that he will be gone unless he is totally dedicated to, I only want to coach this team and I'll wait however long it needs to take. I don't think that's the case. You can say all you want about him being a Cardinals ball boy. That doesn't make you sit on your couch for an extra year and not coach football if you want to coach football. So I don't really buy into those reports. And I mean, what does it accomplish? We'll still have a mediocre season next year, even with Keim not at the helm. If Cliff is what we're just going to get more is about the execution and all of that for another year. So it's a package deal to me. If Cliff's gone, Keim's gone. If Keim's gone, Cliff's gone. And that's all there is.
Yeah, I think this scenario is one that maybe a fan who wants Payton but doesn't want to trade the picks would like to see happen. I just don't think it's super realistic, because I agree. Because of Michael Bidwell's relationship with Steve Keim, I can see a realistic scenario where Cliff is fired and Keim is retained. Not that it should happen, but because I could see Michael Bidwell saying, "I'm moving on from the coach, but I can't give up. I can't get over you, Steve Keim. I'm keeping you." Right?
That's way too realistic. We all know that's happening.
Right.
Too much pain.
But I don't see a scenario where Keim is fired and Cliff is retained. I just don't see that happening.
Especially in the offseason, if we do resign Byron Murphy, Zach Allen, and like Jalen Thompson, or it's like easier to pitch like, well, we're signing these draft picks, so clearly he's having success. Which, I mean, again,
Yeah.
you can spin it any way really you want to, but yeah, I agree.
You know what I think's going to happen? Here's what I think's going to happen. I think Sean Payton is not going to coach this next year, and I think the following year he's going to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. He was an assistant coach there. I think Jerry Jones is going to pay him all the money in the world, and I think Mike McCarthy is at that point going to have, kind of his giving up his ninth life, and I think that's what I think is going to happen. We'll see.
And I think too, I think the Cards are going to get to like 7 wins, and then because our second half of the season stretch is much easier than the first one was, so
yeah,
I think we'll somehow scratch our way to 7 wins, and they'll just be, oh, we had injuries, we had this and that, and try to swipe everything under the rug, and then buckle up.
Right. So what I want to do real quick, I'm going to say hey to some of the folks in the chat. Then I want to get into the draft and free agency because we've spent a lot of time talking about the coaches. But I want to say hey to some of the folks who have dropped in here. If I haven't said hey to you before, Brian, thank you for being here. First and fourth would be my highest offer. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Calvin, thank you for being here. Calvin is a channel member and was the very first super chat when I got monetized. I will not forget that. Thank you, Calvin. Appreciate you being here with us, hanging out. We've got Derek Fife who's here, who I put this up earlier, but yeah, let us know that it was that Gruden was traded from Raiders to Tampa Bay. We've got Jake Worley. Thank you for being here. They'd have to be on charges for him. And I think you mentioned this. I don't think the Chargers are firing their coach. So I just Brandon say that. I don't. By losing to the Chargers, we actually won in that scenario, right?
Won the Sean Payton Bowl, baby.
Right, exactly. But thank you for being here. Want to make sure I hit everyone's at least once in the comments. If I missed you, I apologize. Just going through here. We got Jose. Thanks for being here. I can stand by that Mr. Show. Boom. The Lopez family. Thanks for being here. Dream scenario with Payton for head coach while Cliff stays as OC so he can learn from the best in the game. Firecime. Unfortunately, that's not. I mean, that doesn't happen. Coaches don't get demoted from head coach. They might get moved around if they're lower on the staff, right? If they're a position coach or coordinator. But that's just that. I don't know if it's happened in the modern era of football. You just, from an organizational perspective, when the person who's in charge, you don't demote them. If they're not going to be head coach, you move on from them. But thank you for being here. Appreciate you, Lopez family. I think that's supposed to be Lopez abbreviated. I think. I want to just make sure I say hey to everyone at least once. I think we've got everyone. Okay. Oh, wait, Jackie. Sorry, Jackie just popped in there. Hi, Joe, Kyle, and Troy. Thank you for hanging out with Jackie. Appreciate you from the Red Zone Redbird podcast. Definitely check them out. Okay, so what is going to be which free agents, and just, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we spent a lot of time on the head coach, but Troy, identify a couple of our free agents who for you are must signs that you have to bring back. And then we'll just wrap into that a few free agents who you're going to let walk. You don't have to get the whole list, but give me a list of at least a few of the players that for you are priorities to keep. And then a few of the players that for you are players you're like, yeah, we got to let him walk.
I definitely liked Will Hernandez, what he's brought so far the season so far. I thought he was out for the year. I didn't realize he was going to be back after the bye, or hopefully there for the bye. So I really liked Will Hernandez, Zach Allen, Byron Murphy, and Jalen Thompson. I think all deserve extensions or re-ups in the
Thompson
contract.
Got extended already. I think they extended Jalen Thompson.
Okay, well then, no. Good job, guys. This is Zach Allen and Byron Murphy for sure. I think those guys have been playing really well. Hopefully Byron's back sooner than later. He's been great. And I think that was, the Robbie Anderson, definitely not. Oh, Dortch, of course. Light the Dortch. Dortch is up. He's been just terrific. And think a great Rondale backup because poor Rondale can't stay healthy to save his
Those
life.
Rondale hammies just can't stay.
I know this is growing this time, but it was like the first tackle too, and I saw him get up. I'm like, oh, he's hurt already, like off that stupid reverse. So poetic in a way. Cliff injuring his players on a reverse.
Oh,
But yeah, that's
man.
pretty much the free agent we should resign and going out there. Again, I thought your picks on the offensive line. I mean, really, it's just in the trenches. We really need to buckle down. I think the physicality in this team, not to sound like Ron Wolfley, but it's just really lacking. Again, if we just had a decent run game like on Sunday, we could have closed that game out. But even though we were running the ball so well, but again, I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
Again, just really solidifying the trenches because I feel like everywhere else we're decent, good enough to go, if not great at some spots. So that'd be me.
Were there some players that you're going to let you definitely want to see them go besides Robbie Anderson?
Oh, Rodney Hudson can definitely go, which that's really, really frustrating that's came to this. I thought when we signed him, it was a great alternative because the Corey Linsley, we were like right down to the wire. Like Gambo was pretty much saying it's basically a done deal. And then the last second Chargers eked out, just gave him like a little bit more money. So Hudson needs to go. Obviously, he's not the long-term answer. Who else needs to go? Again, Robbie Anderson by Trayvon Mullen. It's fine. But and then just some of the dead weight. I don't know. I guess on the lines, some of the rotational guys. Got love for the Wolf.
Right, for sure. Let me real quick say hey to a couple folks who just popped in. Louis Padilla, channel member. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you hanging out. Brock Johnson asked this question. If you're going to terminate Cliff Kingsbury, would you fire midseason or wait till the offseason? I don't want to spend a ton of time, but I will just mention one comment on this. And I've mentioned this before. There is an NFL rule where if you fire your coach midseason, you can start interviewing potential candidates in the last 2 weeks of the regular season. So if it's me, if I've decided I'm moving on from him, I am actually going to fire him this week, the bye week, and I'm going to so that I can take advantage of doing those interviews. So that's for me. I would fire him. I would fire him on the bye week, so you can install an interim coach, and then you can take advantage of that head start on that. I don't want to spend too much time. Do either of you have any other thoughts on that? If it were you on that?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get fired, so I think he's
right. But if you were, would you do it mid-season? If you're Michael Bidwell,
I guess it just depends on what if you're firing Cliff. I think you have to make a concerted effort for Sean Payton. So does that 2-week period actually help you or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I don't think it hurt. I mean, who cares? You're already down in the playoffs. Why not? If you lose more, it's a better draft pick. So yeah, sure. Why not?
What do you think, Howard?
I mean, I kind of agree since it's not going to happen, and we just spent an hour talking about crazy hypotheticals that ever happen. But if you're going to do it, it should have been yesterday.
Yeah.
And you install the interim going into the bye week, and you do that thing. I would probably do it after the season. Let the season play out. And that is kind of in the name of fairness, I think. I think we've seen more than enough of Cliff to know that he's not the guy, but also let him play it out, see if he can get healthy, see what he looks like with a healthy team, and then you can rationalize keeping him for another year like we're going to actually do.
Yeah,
I'd probably wait till the end of the season just so you have all the data you can possibly have about how horrific this season was, and then you'll have less criticism to face from the media and all of that for firing another coach if you wait till the end of the season. So that's what I would do.
So going back to Kyler, who are you bringing back, prioritizing bringing back, and who are you letting walk? At least a handful of the players on this list for you.
So the number one, it's like 1A, 1B, just no brainers. Byron Murphy and Zach Allen. You got to find a way to pay them. I don't know how that's going to work out, but you have to. They are and should be key pieces of that defense for a long time. What Zach Allen has turned into this year has been beautiful. Been great to see a defensive player that we drafted have a lot of success on the defensive line. And Byron Murphy, it should be a sign to you how well he has played this year that we almost never have to talk about him. Like, he is kind of invisible this year, but that's for the best of reasons. He's playing lights out most of the time. And he is the lone shining star in that cornerback room. I shouldn't say lone. Antonio Hamilton plays well when he plays.
Marco Wilson's been pretty solid lately, you know? I've been very impressed with Marco.
The last 2 games from Marco Wilson have been really good for him. So he still has some of that potential. We'll see what he turns into next year. But Byron Murphy and Zach Allen are just heads and above everyone else as far as prioritizing them. But I would also – Antoine Wesley, we didn't get to see him this year. I would bring him back. I liked what I saw out of him at the end of last season. And he has the height and the catching. I like him. I would bring him back. But above him, obviously, Greg Dortch. He's provided – some of the only joy I've gotten out of this season are Greg Dortch moments. And it's such a good story, and he seems like a good guy, and he's a legitimate NFL player. Like, he deserves playing time. I would bring him back. It's also not going to cost you a lot. But other than that, like, I would re-sign Will Hernandez, because when he was playing, I think he was playing well. And I think a healthy Will Hernandez for a full season is a really good part of your offensive line, and you can roll with that.
Well, my cat just knocked over an amplifier.
Oh, nice.
My bass amp.
At least it was underneath it.
No, he's sitting on top of it, clawing it. I'm gonna mute myself and let you continue talking, and I'll be right back.
Okay. I would even think about re-signing Cody Ford for another season at the right price, at a cheap price, and see what it actually is like to have Cody Ford and Will Hernandez together.
It's like slightly concerning, though. They're rotating him in and out, that Coward guy,
But I mean, Coward, he played okay.
Their PFF grades are pretty bad, but I mean that's doesn't always tell the whole story.
And as far as ones I wouldn't prioritize bringing back, I would not try that hard to bring Trayvon Mullen back. He hasn't contributed anything to this team. I'm sorry. He hasn't. Obviously, AJ Green's a goner. And I wouldn't, and he might retire anyway, but you mentioned this in your video. I wouldn't try that hard with Rodney Hudson either. We haven't gotten anything out of him this year. When he played, he's one of the best centers to play, but I don't think he has it in him anymore. And if I had to bet my own money, I would say he's retiring anyway. And Justin Pugh, like you said in your video, I think we need to find those other options. He's played well and he's played admirably, but I don't think he's a part of the future of the team. So I would not go that hard in trying to bring him back. And the same to your point in the video of JJ Watt. If you can get JJ back, that's awesome. But if I also had to bet my own money, I think JJ's probably retiring after this season. His health scare, he's a new father. Like, I think he's done with football. He's proved everything he could ever prove in his career. He's one of the best to ever do it. I think he's done. Which will at least free up some money for the Zach Allens and all of that.
I can see JJ like retiring, but like staying in shape, and then like, a team next year does like a Super Bowl run. He comes, he does like a last minute, gets on the run. I don't know.
Yeah, he deserves a ring.
Yeah, that's one I can see him doing. But yeah.
So let's talk about the draft. So this is what I said I would do in the draft in terms of what my approach, my thinking. first round cornerback, like you talked about earlier, Troy, a good cornerback can totally change the face of your defense. We have some good cornerbacks, but imagine if you had Byron Murphy Jr. and a stud. Round 2 center, I think, makes sense to everyone, but we need to find that long-term center. Round 3, I wanted to get 2 interior defensive linemen. I like Zach Allen, but we've talked about depth at that position being an issue. And you can get good. Zach Allen was a 3rd-round pick. You can get good interior defensive linemen in the 3rd round. So I just thought, let's double that up. And even if only one of them hits, you've between, Zach Allen, Rashard Lawrence, and whoever hits here, and then, continue investing. I thought that'd be nice. And then rounds 4, I think you should take a running back every year on day 3. Just keep feeding that pipeline. With receiver, I just wanted to get a developmental player. We've got good frontline receivers. So just get maybe even someone who has some return capabilities. Offensive tackle, I wanted to go. I didn't specify round, but I was thinking like 4th round, get someone who you can develop into a swing tackle and potential starter down the road. And then that last pick was sort of a wild card. So that was my rationale, my thinking in terms of how I approached it. Troy, what is your thinking? How are you going to approach the draft this year if you're in charge?
No, I feel like past couple of weeks, that's all we've been we've kind of always talked about what we would do in the draft when it was going incredibly apparent that we're going to have a nice spot in this year's draft. Again, corner number 1. I mean, you could argue that the interior line is the most needed improve for upgrade with the interior line, but again, your 1st-round pick, you need the premium position premium position, and really edge and corner are the only like things that would make sense. And again, we like our edge. Well, I don't love the edge guys, but we just spent a lot of capital on that, so I think it makes sense to go for that corner. And again, there'll be a couple guys there that will really feed what we need. Again, Keeler Wingo is an Arizona guy. Cool to have him back. He's huge. He's like a DN playing corner. He's a monster. Really, those SEC guys. I think that Cam Smith from South Carolina has been a beast. Guy again, Alabama corner. I forget his name, but can't go wrong with those guys. Again, we'll just really kind of, if you can. Defense is kind of almost like a tension between how good your coverage is versus how good your pass rush is. And I think if we load up on our corners, it'll give some time for those pass rush to get home. Again, solidifying at center at 2nd round, of course. There was a reason why we were linked to the Ravens center now. Who was
Linderbaum?
Linderbaum. We were linked to him quite frequently in the last year's draft, and turns out it was because Rodney Hudson's situation. So I think we finally rectify that, get a guy for the future, but also getting a veteran to start the season and bridge if the rookie can't beat him out. Yeah, and I mean, again, we got to shore up our interior on defensive line as well. I love, totally blanking. The guy's always hurt. Who's good, but
Rashard Lawrence.
I love him.
Yeah, I you and me both, right? The talent.
Exactly. Can't stay on the field. If we can get a guy that can rotate him with him, we need a true nose tackle because, I mean, this year our run defense has been pretty decent, but like last year it was just getting eviscerated. So if you control the trenches, you usually control the game. So got to get on it.
Yeah, real quick, I want to hit on a couple of comments, and we'll get to you, Kyler, after that. Super chat, thank you, Cruz. I didn't look into too much what happened to the O-line coach. So the last I heard was that there was an incident with him with groping. That's the reports. Have you heard anything different than that? There was something in Mexico City. Authorities made the organization aware that he had been groping someone. I don't know anything more than that, and he was fired. Have you all heard anything beyond that?
That's all I've heard.
I've heard a little bit more, and there's a reason why he was immediately fired.
Okay, all right. I won't pry, but it sounds like it was bad.
It was just the person worked for the NFL. So
that's not good either.
That's
I mean,
not
it's
very
not.
smart.
I mean, listen, it doesn't matter who it is, but
Yeah.
I mean, but that's not smart. On top of being really effed up. So
yeah, there's a reason why it was an instantaneous goodbye.
Okay. Yeah, man. Okay.
Yikes.
Real quick, let me get on a couple comments. We got AZ Cards. Thanks for being here. Get some O-line. Definitely planning it. Jordan P saying I go D-line first round, then trade down, get O-line. Depends on how I pick it. It's not a huge fan of the corners in this class. I will say if I didn't go corner first, and I thought about this, it was going to be defensive line first. I might have got a cornerback later. So I don't hate that. If I don't go cornerback, it's probably defensive line. So I don't hate that at all. Jose saying a rookie center is tough position to develop first year, better to shop. Maybe actually, I talked about that in my video. You might have missed it. I have a plan for that. Draft him, but there was a free agent I signed. So go back and watch that video if you get a chance, Jose, because I actually have a plan for that.
The Chiefs and Ravens, I believe, are rolling with their rookie centers, and they ain't looking too bad. So
right. All right. So Kyler Bird. What do you think in terms of your approach to the draft?
I think you have three legitimate options in the first round. Right now, if we stand pat, we've got a really good pick. A lot of the teams ahead of us desperately need a quarterback. I mean, we could land a top 3 prospect at 8 or 9 with the amount of quarterbacks that are needed. But I think you can legitimately go for corner, defensive line, and no one's mentioned this, but I don't have complete faith in what we've got. I think if there is that elite talent at pass rusher, that's a premium position too. We don't have a pass rush this year. It's been bad. I know that we've seen the flashes from Cam Thomas and Myjai Sanders, and I think that both of them can develop into rotational starters at an NFL level. But Marcus Golden doesn't have the closeout speed anymore to actually get to the quarterback. He hasn't this year, almost at all. He's got the moves. He has the mind. He doesn't have the closeout speed to actually get to the quarterback this year. And we have lacked pass rush desperately and made the situation on our secondary much harder than it ever needed to be if you had an effective pass rush. So I think that's a legitimate first-round target. If there's that elite talent there that makes the difference, that's the Nick Bosa or whatever it is to come off the edge and actually get to the quarterback, you can pull the trigger on that. Second round, I think everyone's kind of in agreement. That's where you go and you get a center. And whether or not you throw them in like the Ravens or Chiefs, or you do your plan, Joe, and bring in someone else to help develop the young guy, I think that's where you get him, is the second round. And that's been kind of the case of the last few years, right? Creed Humphrey, Tyler Linderbaum, you can find some really great centers in the second round. And that's an absolute need. And then the rest of the draft, you need to be filling up on both trenches. If you get that blue chip shutdown corner like a Sauce Gardner in the first round, that's amazing. But you got to load up the trenches because that's where we're losing games. And I think you can safely, in this next draft, avoid running back, avoid wide receiver. Both of those positions are good when healthy, which I know is tough because they haven't been this year. But you don't need to get another second or third round wide receiver, I swear. We don't need another tight end. We literally just need big boys on both sides of the ball and get whoever you can, get the elite talent that you can.
Yeah. I had a feeling, I figured that edge rusher would be the one place I thought if people were really going to disagree with my takes on this, it was that I did not address edge rusher. And that was, as we've talked about, I'm sure you know this from our conversations over the months, that was a very intentional decision by me of giving Myjai and Cam a chance. And, like I said in the video, kind of I'm building that interior pass rush, signing a free agent, getting some rookies in there, and trusting that a little bit. to kind of take the pressure off those two. And my mindset is, like I said, if those two don't pull it off next year, I'm going to prioritize edge rusher, right? Probably in free agency. But I want to give them a chance. And I think if you have really good coverage and good interior pass rush, you can live with an outside pass rush that is spotty. So, that was kind of my thought process that I did, because if you draft an edge rusher with a premium pick, all of a sudden you've really put those two that we drafted this year who showed us promise, you really make it hard for them to crack the lineup. So I want to give them one more chance. And then next year. So that was, but I get if people disagree with me, because a conventional wisdom is our outside linebackers have struggled mightily. We need to fix that. Right. So I totally get why people might want to go with edge rusher.
Now, what blows my mind is the amount of Cardinals fans I've seen that desperately want Bijan Robinson from Texas. And he's great. He's awesome. He's going to be really good in the NFL, I bet. But no, like in the first round, Joe and I have talked about this forever, but you never draft a first round running back. I mean, that is not team building at all. That's just about the worst position you could possibly draft in the first round. Benjamin was great. We won't even talk about the controversy of releasing him. He filled in for James Conner more than admirably. He played really well when he was on the field, and he was a 7th rounder. And he played really well at Arizona State, too. They produce great running backs. No running back that has ever been created. I don't even care, really, if you're a Derrick Henry or prime Saquon. No, you just don't. That is not draft value at all.
So Christian McCaffrey, like, Carolina sucked pretty much every year. Christian McCaffrey was on that team, like, prime example.
I mean, that's not what's going to change your team into a Super Bowl winner.
Well, like, in how many Super Bowl teams can you name in the contemporary era that have won by being built around a high-dollar running back? There might be one example or two, but I can't think of them, right?
No.
I mean, you just don't build that way. And, like, listen, I get it. Like, that running back is great. And do I want him on my team in a vacuum? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to use a first-round pick for him? No. And it's not just about the draft capital, because, like, okay, the first-round pick, again, a player with how much running backs are injured, how short their careers are, I don't want to do that. But, like, I don't want to dedicate $15 million to when you have to sign that guy to a contract a year or whatever it's going to be for that elite running back. I want to put that money in an offensive line, and then you can go with those day 3 running backs and get the same kind of rushing production as a team.
Yeah.
Right?
But Joe, we gave James Conner $13 million
over how many years, right? Yeah. But I meant $15 million a year.
Like, gotcha. Yeah.
Like, we're talking, because that's Christian McCaffrey money, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I don't want to do. 15, like, for me, when I think about a running back room, I'm willing to pay between $5 and $7 million a year for one of my running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest need to be guys that are in rookie contracts or veteran minimum kind of deals. That's for me. So I'll pay one running back, but I'm not paying them premium. So, like, James Conner's had a bad year, but I don't mind how much we're paying him for one running back. But I don't want to pay more than one running back that amount. The whole running back room needs to be no more than 10 or 12 million in salary for the entire room, in my opinion. And that's kind of the cap. So, yeah. And, and this is why Benjamin was valuable. He was cheap and productive. And unfortunately, again, it wasn't a production issue, why he was released. Right. But yeah, who blocks for the running back lineman. And that's why I want to build the line. Right. That's why I want to build the offensive line. So, sorry. Yeah. Did either of you want to jump in there? I know I just kind of went on a soapbox, but
no, the only Super Bowl team we could kind of argue is built around a running back. And then since, like, the defense is really good, so the running game, I feel like it was like the Ravens that Joe Flacco, because Ray Rice, was he on that team? Or
he was, yeah.
So he was a high-paid running back, and the defense is really what carried that team. But
Yeah.
if you can play complementary football like that, but again, you have to have an elite defense to go with that running back. So
Yeah.
it's not valuable. It's very rare that even happens.
Right. And, Jordan's saying, to be fair, Eno's not in the same stratosphere as Bijan, but running back Ron wants to. Yeah. And listen, it's not a talent thing. I'm not saying day 3 running backs are as good. What it is, though, is the drop off in production isn't far enough to be worth it. And if you build a good old line, it kind of doesn't matter. You just you look at what San Francisco's done, right? Of course, they traded.
But it's funny, they just did the reverse and now going for Christian McCaffrey.
Go figure, right?
He kind of does other things, though.
So let me ask you what. So we talked about draft. Or actually, before I ask this, between the players I signed or retained and my draft picks, is there anything that in terms of the things that I propose, that you would be like, I wouldn't do that? Did anything stand out to you as something that, Joe, I love you, but I wouldn't do that?
No, I think that's all. Like Ben Neiman, you wanted to keep, and I'm like, whatever. On Ben Neiman, he could go. I wish that Chandler. Who was that guy that I think he got signed away? But the
Chandler
Woodley.
Chandler
what's his
Wooten.
name? Wooten. Yeah, get him back. He was sick.
Yeah.
No, I agree with all the broad strokes and kind of what you did. It's it is what it is. I like the idea that this team isn't a full rebuild. There's kernels of good pieces. There's just fine tuning here and there, especially along the trenches, that can get this team over the hump.
Yeah. Kyler, did you have anything that that I did that you wouldn't have done?
No, nothing major, because you focus on the trenches, and that's where it is. I think on the skill positions, we only ever say that about the offense, but skill positions of the defense too. We've got some great pieces. We've got the Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker duo, who's still really good. Budda Baker's, I think, from our opinion, even though he's top 10 in Pro Bowl voting that I keep seeing, I think he's taking a little bit of a step back this year, but his leadership's through the roof, and he's obviously really good. And Byron Murphy, Isaiah Simmons has flashes of brilliance. Zaven Collins has even looked good at times. Yeah, it's just up front on both sides it's a totally different team. If you're healthy and you have both sides of the line beefed up into something more reasonable, then you have a different team and maybe a different outcome. Like, granted, coaching wouldn't have changed, but you'd have a much better team.
Especially when you're good in the trenches, that just has cascading effects across your tight. Like, if you have a good D line, your linebackers can play better because they don't have linemen in their face. They can see the field better. Your cornerbacks can not hold up as long as protection, because if you're getting pressure with 4, then that's the name of the game, right? If you can get pressure with 4 and not have to worry about blitzing, then you're doing all right. And if you have a good offensive line, then Kyler can sit back there in that pocket and those routes will open up, and your running game can be consistent, and you can kind of control the tempo. Football is a hard sport, but it's also not hard when you got good people in your trenches,
Yes. Want to say hey to Eric. Thank you for being here. Good evening to you as well. So let's talk about what you two gentlemen would do in free agency. How would you approach free agency if it were up to you? Troy.
It's almost kind of it's almost got to assume if Cliff's back or if it's someone else, because then, your personnel might kind of change or not. But I agree with the broad strokes. Again, it's what we've just been beating a dead horse. It's the trenches. I like your offensive line pickups, that they were both very versatile. So they can play tackle or guard, center guard, because again, if you're going at the plan, if we're drafting a second round center, we're probably going to need a guy to bridge the gap initially and maybe hope that the rookie beats him out, but that we have a fallback plan. I think the one thing I might want to get one more edge guy, almost like a Marcus Golden-esque guy, just to feel a little, because man, if neither of those two guys hit, Cam Thomas or Majay, if they just kind of plateau, or if we're to take a nosedive, then then we're really in trouble on defense because then there's zero pass rush. So maybe get a more veteran, like the Jerry Hughes type kind of guys, older veteran guy that can provide a good floor for the pass rush. But again, a lot of it's all in the trenches, and I think our skill players or skill groups on both sides of the ball are pretty good at the moment. Just some depth here and there. Cody Ford, I don't know if I loved him. He's been pretty bad.
Yeah,
I really want to see Marquise Hayes get a full season going. He looked really promising in that one preseason game, and I forgot what analyst, some NFL draft analyst who specializes in O-line. Is he the offensive line guy? Yeah.
Yep.
He was very high on Marquise Hayes, and so we've had every reason to believe that he could be a really good player if he comes back healthy.
So I just want to mention this to your point because you mentioned an edge, and I wrestled with that. There was a free agent I almost included in the video, and the only reason I didn't is because I think where he's at now, he might be back as a starter, and I had him as a backup. It was a versatility thing, but you might like this, you might not. I had Kyle Van Noy as a player, and the idea was he was going to be a veteran backup middle linebacker who can also play edge, because if you look at it, like over his career, he's played a significant percent of snaps as edge rusher and as inside linebacker. So he was going to be a guy I was going to bring up because I wanted a veteran backup behind Simmons and Collins, but also thought, well, if I brought him in, he could also be a backup at edge rusher. So I didn't include him because after watching the Chargers game, how much he played, I just felt like I don't think he's going to come here to be a rotational backup guy when he's probably going to be a starter somewhere else. What are your thoughts on that?
I just remember Kyler taking the soul in the Miami Cardinals game. And that one bootleg or something like that.
Yeah. Kyler, how would you approach free agency?
I think you're spot on in drafting a center, but still needing a center. And there are going to be options out there for you. You presented some good ones. You're not going to get the same Cinderella situation of Rodney Hudson back. I'm glad that we had 2 years with him playing. He's one of the best of the last decade, but you don't need that to win games either. Just because you have one like Corey Linsley and the LA Chargers, he has not made much of a difference in their pass protection, and he's consistently getting beat. So you can get decent play, especially if your guard positions are strong. And I think bringing Will Hernandez back goes a long way towards that. That also means you kind of have to figure out left guard as well if you're going to let Justin Pugh walk, and that one that seems like a hard position to find. A legitimate left guard that plays well does not grow on trees. Finding that in free agency might arguably be more important than finding a center. You can start your second round center. Teams have had success with that lately. But finding that legit guy at left guard could potentially be a really big deal in free agency. And I think one position where you should, if you are the GM, spend the money. Like we've shown this year that not spending the money in some of those positions has really beaten us up. And I would probably also go invest money into some type of veteran free agent on the defensive line. I know we want to draft some big guys as well, but having that presence like the JJ Watt that we had, who I just don't see being on the team next year, I think is super valuable. Look what it's done for Zach Allen. Zach Allen pre-JJ Watt, Zach Allen post-JJ Watt, different player. So having that there, I think, is really valuable. And there are some decent options, in that realm. I think Deron Payne's probably going to get paid a lot of money.
I think he's going to be too much.
A lot of money, probably. But there are other options. Dwayne Smoot's not bad. Javon Hargrave's getting older, but he's definitely still good. And you've got older options if you are looking for the 1 year rental. That's sort of our go-to. But you've got the lesser known or younger Puna Fords and players like that. You have more options of getting that veteran defensive lineman than you do finding the guy at left guard, I think, like by a mile. But both of those, I would invest that in. More than cornerback, I think you got to go get the blue chip guy in the draft. That's the young guy that's going to turn it around. But it's the theme of the entire night has been the lines,
right?
Building those however you can, and even double dipping and building them in free agency and the draft. That's how you're supposed to build your team.
Yeah.
Even though we've avoided doing that for the last several years.
AQ Shipley still around? No, I don't think so. I think he's sometimes on Pat McAfee, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned so the guy I had in my video that I brought in was Matt Ioannidis, right? One of those veteran guys who, like, if you look at his PFF grades, he's been good. Like, he's more of a pass rusher, a little better. He's had 7.5 and 8.5 sacks. He's not. I think he's probably going to have a contract. You're probably looking somewhere between $7 and $9 million a year for him, whereas Deron Payne is 15 to 20 million. I have a feeling, So I think that's the kind of guy. I liked him because he's big enough that he can play nose, but also kind of D end. But yeah, I think getting one of those guys on the line is definitely important. I know we've gone a while and it's kind of late, and I want to respect everyone's time. And we've had some really great comments in the chat. So I think I want to have one question that we'll kind of go out on. But if y'all missed it, I had a premiere of a video where it was where I went over how I would fix the Cardinals. So if you're in the chat and you haven't watched it, go check it out. That's kind of what we've been talking about. But I want to ask what each of you think of Hard Knocks. Someone asked that in the chat earlier. And so I want to kind of I think that's a good way to go out for this episode. Here we go. Brock asks, what are your thoughts on Hard Knocks? Positive or negative? Like it or hate it? Troy, what are your thoughts?
So I haven't seen the latest one, the 49ers one. It was just too painful. I didn't want to put myself through it. Which apparently from all the they cut it to make it seem like it wasn't as bad as it was. So it's definitely the Cardinals really just burning everything they touch, because now even Hard Knocks is like integrity has definitely been dragged through the mud, because there's been two, which I understand probably why they both haven't been included, but two scandals in this team that have just been completely glossed over. Granted, one of the two is probably for legal reasons and will remain that way, so understandably. But like the Eno situation, I think they did it out of protection of both the player and the organization. But like it's like these are things we all know, and it's been reported, and it's been trying to scrub. But if you guys watch the PHNX, they do that post show, and they have or did have the directors of Hard Knocks on with them, and that dude clearly said, you're gonna see, and it's pretty wild. And then they have completely just lied and say, oh no, he misspoke, there is no footage, nothing happened. And it's just like, sure, we all know you're lying to us at this point. So like it's definitely taken a hit in terms of, I think, even the public perception, because now we all know it's a propaganda piece, it's a puff piece. Same like the All or Nothing. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if the season's good or bad, they're going to tell a story, and we get it. Like, it's a partnership. They're not going to, no team's ever going to allow the NFL films to go in there just to completely crap all over their team and really show the dirty, ugly side of professional sports. Because, spoiler alert, we all know the Cardinals are better. A lot of teams are like this way, we just aren't as in tune with it. Like, go to the Texans last year, you probably get a really colorful performance there as well. So I like seeing it because I like watching these guys, and it is kind of cool to see him. But at the end of the day, it's kind of annoying knowing there's some really interesting stories. And like, again, I'm curious to see what Kyler and Cliff's real relationship is, because if everything we're hearing, it is anything but what's probably being shown on screen. Which, just a comment on the Kyler schematically blank thing. LOL, that was funny, but I think it's getting taken a little out of context. And
there was a great tweet that broke that down. He was talking about that one play and
the Ben
what the
Solak
Chargers
tweet.
did.
Yeah. I think he was just saying it was a bad play call. Other people are saying, oh, he's completely trashing Cliff's scheme. It's like, well, I think he's just saying it wasn't a great play. And then the reason why they didn't audible out of it or call a timeout because the safety didn't come down till post snap. So at that point, the play was already going. So
it was a great defensive play. Is what it
exactly
called, right?
That's what it was.
But I think there's a larger conversation about are we too predictable, right? They had that play because
that's what Solak was leading on to. So you just hear it so many times from other people. Well, there's smoke, there's fire. Cliff's offensive scheme is simple. It's predictable. We know it.
Kyler, what do you think about Hard Knocks?
I'm not gonna lie to you guys.
I haven't watched it.
I haven't watched it.
Okay.
I deal with so much pain on Sunday.
I'm with you, but hey, it's not as bad when you watch it. It's more of a feel good.
Because I hurt pretty bad on Sundays, and then I gotta go work on Monday, and then that hurts too. And, I just deal with a lot of pain, and I'm not sure that I can do more. But I'm at least at the end of the season, I will watch it through some like masochistic curiosity. I'll work my way through it. I might avoid some of it. Like the All or Nothing, I enjoy watching, but I won't watch the end. It just hurts too much. I already have enough pain.
I'll tell you, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. I love just seeing the behind the scenes stuff, even if it is highly selective what they show you, because I just enjoy that. I like seeing the humans. I will say all but one episode have been kind of boring, very milquetoast, very bland. The one episode where Buddha, where they won and Buddha played on the injury, that was an exciting episode. Maybe it's part because they won, but also part of it, I think, is Buddha. And I think that was just a more interesting episode. It's been a little boring. I'm still going to watch it. I'm a glutton for punishment. There's one good thing that has come out of this for me. And I tweeted this out, and I think we talked about this before. For me, for all the crap, the one good thing is that the rest of the fans around the league are getting to see what we already know about Buddha Baker, right? Buddha Baker is coming out of this looking like a star, shining like he deserves to. And I have a friend, Kevin, who might watch. He watches this. He's not even a Cardinals fan. Really good dude from Texas. And he texted me. He's like, dude, Buddha Baker is a stud. I'm like, yeah, we know this, right? And I'm glad you get to see this now, right? So for me, for all the crap, it's worth it for Buddha Baker to get the kind of recognition he deserves for the absolute dog that he is.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Like I mentioned earlier, the Buddha Baker Pro Bowl voting, he's had a down year compared to where he's been in the past, but I guess the Hard Knocks effect has brought him to the public's attention of how amazing he is, because he has not been getting the respect he deserves over the last several years. So I guess even if that's the only good thing that comes out of it, Buddha is one of my favorite Cardinals really of all time.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for him.
You do see, I think, I haven't watched the Mexico one, but the episode before that is Lana Beachum, and it was hilarious. He was talks the most crap on the field, which I did not expect. It was hilarious.
Well, you think of him as a high character guy, which he is, right? Yeah. And so it seems incongruent, but a person can be high character and talk trash, right? So
exactly, it's just
it surprised me too. I loved it.
So yeah, and it's cool when they kind of go around the valley, be like, oh, I know that place, like the two restaurants they've been at, I've been there. I'm like, oh, I know where they're at, so that's kind of fun.
That all makes me homesick though.
Yeah,
but you're right. But no, that's cool. But it makes me homesick.
Exactly. Yeah.
So any other thoughts? Everyone who's been here in the chat, thank you for hanging out. I know we couldn't get to everyone's comments, but I appreciate y'all, and then we tried to get to at least I try to get at least one comment from everyone. So as we get out of here, thanks guys for hanging out and talking about the video, and for having this conversation. Troy, anything you want to say on the way out, and obviously anything you want to promote?
Nothing really to promote. World Cup's going on, so everyone enjoy that. Go USA.
USA.
But like, I'm enjoying. After we lost the second Seattle game, I was like, I'm done watching. Like, or if I'm bored, I'll watch the games. Then, but right now I'm like over it. But every week I'm still like, I'm gonna watch the game, and I still get a little excited again. And I was at the Chargers Cardinals games. I saw that in person, which was a lot of fun. I'm still enjoying watching it. I think the main thing I'm looking forward to is hoping to see the offense really take flight and Kyler kind of turn it around, because at the end of the day, we really gotta see. And answer your question, Mono, it was allegedly, I've heard the rumors, I don't know if it's 100% true, allegedly is someone that worked for the NFL. But again, all rumors at this point, but this is someone I was talking to at the game was saying allegedly, which would make sense why he was instantly fired. But yeah, so hopefully the offense turns around, and the Cardinals have a culture problem at this point. I think we all kind of know it, and hopefully that starts to rectify, because next year we'll have. I don't want to do this again next year. I don't want to do this again though next year.
Right. Kyler, anything you want to say on our way out?
Well, it's been a pleasure to be back. Haven't done one of these in a while. Sad situation that we're in, but there's always some type of hope. The only reason you watch football is because you believe in something, and one day we'll get there. But that's for next year maybe. But other than that, as always, go check out AZ Sports Underground that we've got here in this corner.
I never get that right.
Yeah. The website run by me and Joe. Still going at it. And if anyone watching is interested in writing, always just reach out to me or Joe, and we can talk about that.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I want to say hey to a couple of real folks who said some nice things. Eric, who's I believe said it was a Seahawks fan. Thanks for hanging out with us. Just subscribe. Really appreciate that. Catadog, thanks for being here. I didn't get a comment from you, but thanks but thanks for hanging out with us. Brock, appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much for being here. Mark, for being a great supporter, a writer for AZ Sports Underground, does some really, if you are a Coyotes fan, check out, he does a weekly kind of report. If you want to just kind of know what's gone on with the Coyotes for the past week, check that out. Thank you for that. My friend Kevin, who I mentioned earlier, was lurking. Kevin, what's up, buddy? I appreciate you hanging out. So yes, everyone smash that like button. Thank you. Final record predictions, then we'll go. How many wins do you think this team's getting?
7 and 10.
Kyler?
I agree. 7 and 10.
I do as well. I think this last game was disappointing, but it wasn't, for as bad as the outcome was, the team didn't play horribly. I know people don't want to hear that.
They played well.
And I think that we're going to see Kyler, and we're going to see those receivers healthy. I think they're going to manage 7 wins, but not anything more than that. We're seeing 6-11, an optimistic 9-8, 6-11. That I would agree. I'm at that 7-10 with you all.
I think it's like the Broncos, Falcons, and maybe the Niners, because they won't be playing anyone for the last game.
Right.
And I think the Cardinals will be pissed, and the Niners, I don't know, won't care. So
Agent wants that top 5 pick. So well, yeah. So yeah, I think that's what we'll see though, right? But well, hey everyone, thanks for being here. I'm gonna do the shout out to my channel members. A lot of them were in the chat here, so I appreciate everyone hanging out. Thank you all. Thank you to Troy. Thank you for Kyle. This was a lot of fun. We will see you all next time. Enjoy the bye week. The bye week came at a good time. We need this, right? Yeah. Emotionally, it came at a good time, right? So we're going to get out of here. I'm going to do a shout out to my channel members. Thank you all. It's been a lot of fun. See y'all next time. Peace.